All right. Let's talk a little bit about this heavyweight division. Anthony Joshua is not going to be holding all those belts by this time next year. He has 2 mandatories that have been dropped on him, and more than likely he's going to have to drop one of those 2 belts. And I do believe it's by design and not by happenstance. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel, subscribers. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. Also, I want to say special thank you to everybody that has become a new member of the channel. Thank you guys that really support and are hardcore members of the LDBC. Shout outs to you. Also, thank you to the Patreon community. Really appreciate you for all the support you have over there. We got new videos and new advice videos coming out there. I think you'll really enjoy the one about the 3 major reasons that young people struggle in life. Also, make sure you come by the live stream Monday through Friday at around 11:15 a.m. Central Standard Time, and OG Boxing Talk on Sunday with myself, Blood Boxing, KQKC Boxing, Trap House Boxing, and Curtis Anderson. Now, as you can see, we got a lot going on the channel. Join the channel, become a part of the movement. Now, let's talk about this, man. There's an article came out about in World Boxing News today, and it talked about something that we already knew was the case. I had already known was the case. I've been talking about before the Anthony Joshua Andy Ruiz fight, and Eddie Hearn had been talking about it before the Anthony Joshua Andy Ruiz fight. Eddie Hearn, before that fight, said that more than likely AJ was going to have to drop one of those belts because the sanctioning bodies, the WBO and the IBF, were going to order him to fight mandatories. Now, mandatories are it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation in boxing, in my opinion. It is very important to have mandatory challengers so that you ensure that fighters are fighting the best fighters, and they are not cherry picking and run around and picking who to fight and who not to fight, which is something that the IBF is there's a stickler about. The WBO, in my opinion, is very selective about, and the WBC is at this point in time with this franchise belt has pretty much just created a blatant way to avoid mandatories. But the fact that Anthony Joshua, who has 3 belts, not 4, 3 belts, not 4. The fact that he's got 3 belts, that means that you're always going to have a mandatory, because most of them require you to fight a mandatory every year. As a champion, heavyweight champion, you're not going to fight but maybe 2 times a year. So that means at least one of your fights every year is going to wind up being a mandatory. And then it's going to be that way for a while because, and then every once in a while, you might get something where they are both like, hold on, man, you have been our champion for a couple years now and you've not faced a mandatory. You got to do it. So both fights can wind up having to be mandatory fights. In this case, for Anthony Joshua, it's the IBF and the WBO. As Joshua, I do believe, won the WB. His first championship was the IBF that he got off of Charles Martin. Then he won a vacant title for the WBA against Vladimir Klitschko, a vacant title. And I think some of you guys out there that talk about Anthony Joshua and how many champions he's beat really don't just, believe what you say and then go verify it, right? If you've heard it somewhere and you believe it and it sounds good to you, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. There's a lot of very credible sources that provide credible information. But when you hear it, just go verify it. If you can't verify it, then you say, hey, this is what he said. I can't verify it, right? Dan Rayfield said Deontay Wilder had 20 million, did 20 million, had a guarantee of $20 million. I can't verify that, but I know that there's got to be a reason why Showtime's, who paid him a lot of money last fight for a regular fight, says, I can't do it this time. It's because his price went up. That's logic to me. But when Dan Rayfield says it, I can't verify that, and I will put out there I can't verify it. But once I can't verify it, I'll just tell you I can't verify it. But with you guys in this 3 belt stuff, and how many champions that he fought, just think. Vladimir Klitschko was a champion. He just wasn't a champion when Vladimir Klitschko fought him. But I digress. He has only defended the mandatory for one of those belts, if I recall correctly, and that is the WBA belt. When he fought Alexander Povetkin, that's the only mandatory he fought. He was going to fight Pulev for the IBF mandatory. That's why he didn't fight and defend his WBA belt against Luis Ortiz. Luis Ortiz was supposed to get a shot at Anthony Joshua immediately after the WBA, the vacant title, after the Vladimir Klitschko Anthony Joshua fight. That next fight was supposed to be Luis Ortiz, but they didn't do it. They said, "Oh no, we held the IBF first." So the IBF said we have to defend that. So they were in the works for defending the IBF. Though they're breaking a blatant promise they made to Luis Ortiz to do it. So they were going to fight Pulev, but Pulev said, "Nah, I'm not ready for the fight." So Pulev got out of the fight. Now, even miraculously, he's still the mandatory, but he didn't take it, so they fought Carlos Takam. There has been no WBO mandatory because there was Joseph Parker, then there was Alexander Povetkin, then there was Andy Ruiz, where he lost to Andy Ruiz. And then he couldn't defend after the Andy Ruiz fight, one, because he lost all his belts. So he's clearly in a situation where he's going to have to defend these. He's going to have to defend these mandatory belts. And Eddie Hearn said before it happened, he's going to wind up having to drop one or the other. But now it might be the case that I think he's going to drop them. The reason I think he's going to drop, and again, this is my opinion, the reason that I think he's going to wind up dropping them is, number one, he ain't going to get through. I don't believe he's going to get through Pulev and Alexander Usyk. One of those two guys are going to beat him. And I think that they're going to want a soft touch for him in at least one of those two fights. Maybe they believe Kubrat Pulev is that soft touch, and they can wind up having Anthony Joshua drop the WBO so that another matchroom fighter, Alexander Usyk, can then get the WBO belt in some matchup where he's dang near guaranteed to win. And I think that's why I think the WBO is just, man, it's so shady, man. Alexander Usyk is about to fight for a heavyweight championship, and he's not fought anybody at heavyweight. But yet you've got other guys like Luis Ortiz had to go years and be the mandatory for the WBA for years and still didn't get the shot at the WBA belt through the mandatory system. He wound up getting it. He wound up getting the shot because he fought Deontay Wilder as a voluntary. But yet Alexander Usyk all of a sudden just pops up there and he's the mandatory right away. Man, if y'all don't see how that's some preferential treatment for Alexander Usyk, man, I just don't understand you. But Anthony Joshua is going to wind up dropping one of those belts, and that belt is going to go to a matchroom fighter. That is my prediction. That is what Eddie Hearn had already said. So don't expect it to be anything else. And obviously, very obviously, that takes the pressure off of Anthony Joshua ever having to fight Deontay Wilder or ever having to fight Tyson Fury, because he will no longer be the unified champion. He will no longer hold 3 belts. He'll hold 2 of those belts. And since he holds 2 of those belts, then we're just rewinding back to when he held 2 belts and it was okay for him to fight Joseph Parker instead of fighting Deontay Wilder. Because, hey, Joseph Parker's a champion, right? So now he drops the WBO belt, or when he drops the WBO belt, I don't believe it'll be the IBF because the IBF is with, I do believe that's with ESPN and Top Rank. When he drops the WBO, and if he gets past Kubrat Pulev, then hey, you know, he's got to earn his belt back. And hey, you know, that's why he's not going to fight Deontay Wilder and get knocked out. Anyway, that's my take on it. Let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.